Wages are rising. So is household wealth. We have the lowest inflation rate and the fastest recovery of any major economy in the world. Folks are starting to see it. Today I learned the consumer sentiment, and you guys saw it, surged by 29% in the last 2 months, the biggest 2-month jump in 30 years. We got more to do.
That was President Biden at the White House last week, lauding a report from the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index. It shows a 13% jump in Americans' optimism about the economy and their personal finances. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Director Rohit Chopra is back with us. So you've got good news out there. Oh, imagine that. There's an economy that's working for people. The administration's talking about it, but there are also aspects of the economy that cut a little bit closer to home, particularly with respect to children. And so I wanted to play a little element for you from Nikki Haley on the child tax credit, and let's talk about it on the other side.
When you lift up the least of these, that's when you're doing sustainable progress. When you just throw out a tax credit and say, we're going to give it to these people or give it to these people, that's not sustaining anything. That's actually harming them. Instead, let's do the harder work and say, what can we do to get them into a better situation?
So the problem I have with that, it's not throwing out a tax credit for children is a bad thing. This actually helps families. Talk a little bit about why this idea that's being pushed out here, that somehow this tax credit is bad versus a tax cut for wealthy people.
Well, you know, we think a lot about people's personal finances, their debt, and many people get on, again, this treadmill of debt when they can't make ends meet, and one little slip up sends them really down a bad place. You know, you see that when people have a little bit of a cushion and they can then get higher wages, it really creates a lot of stability. It puts them in a better place, and I think we see that's really good for the whole economy. So I hope that we make sure that a lot of families, especially parents, are able to really participate in the growing economy.
This bill that is on the table is from the House Ways and Means Committee. On Friday, I believe that they approved. They voted 40-3 to approve a bipartisan tax package that included this child tax credit. But this would be the second time that Americans would get a child tax credit under the Biden administration. In the first year of the Biden administration, there was a monthly child tax credit for folks that qualified. They got a little extra in their bank account. I know that the vice president, this is something that she has championed over the years. What else can the administration do to help relieve some of the, separate from Congress, because this is a special house? What else can the administration be doing?
Well, I think we're really focused on what are people's monthly bills. Right. And what I see is that the interest rates on credit cards, for example, have shot up so high. In fact, the banks have raised it higher than the Fed has raised rates. And so you have people paying 25, 22% interest rates on their credit cards, speeding it up. We're looking at all sorts of ways that people can switch, get better rates, and put a lot more money in their monthly budgets.
There's been a string of just really positive headlines for the administration related to the economy. Retail sales up strongly in December as Americans showed continued willingness to spend. The S&P 500 rallying to 1% all-time high, surpassing previous record. Consumer sentiment logs biggest jump in decades. Those are headlines the administration has been waiting for. I think there are folks who say, I don't have student loan debt. I don't overdraft my bank account. I don't actually care about any of these things because they don't impact me as an individual consumer. What do you say to those folks, right, about the way in which it then impacts the broader economy?
Well, that's why we have to be relentless to make sure that every single person feels that the economy is really working for them. We're working on auto loans, mortgages, credit cards, all the monthly bills, and I put it on us to make sure that everyone is feeling that it's going in the right direction. I think people saving up to buy a home, for example,
most young people feel they'll never be able to afford a home.
It's high.
And we got to change that. And that's what we're working on, what so many are working on. So I take that as a challenge to do even more.
I'm saying something slightly different, though, which is I think if you're looking at this through the lens of do any of these things impact me individually, you may not be thinking of it through the lens of I want to sell my home. And in order to sell my home, I need to make sure that there is a buyer who has the capital to do that. That becomes additionally challenging if you have a generation that is saddled with student loan debt, with car payments, with things that they simply can't afford, so they are not in capacity to save. I mean, I think there are folks who don't see this in a broader ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think also we want to make sure that the employment market really stays strong, because ultimately that is when it gives people lots of options. They can quit a bad boss, they can get higher wages, and they can do more for their family, too.
My friend Rohit Chopra, if I have to wake up early, you have to wake up with me. Thank you so much for being with us.